right in the mouth and then punching their way into the Eastern Conference semifinals. And this is all while they sent the Orlando Magic packing right into the offseason. Welcome into the Sound Off Postgame Podcast. Thank you for hanging out with me. I'm Mark D'Amico, and I appreciate you giving us a watch or a listen on whatever channel you are consuming this podcast on. Make sure that you subscribe, and please, if you're on YouTube, shoot some comments in below. All right, we want to hear from you and what your thoughts were on this game. This is a two-way conversation. You are a part of this podcast, so make sure you're sending in your comments. As I said, the Celtics landed a knockout punch, and it was a big one. This wasn't a punch that just wobbled the Orlando Magic. This is a punch that knocked them down to the ground, and they never got up. This game was tight in the third quarter. The Celtics led just 59-58 with less than 6 minutes left in the third quarter, and then from that moment on, the doors were blown open. It was a complete onslaught the rest of the third quarter, a 24-4 run to close out the third quarter, which gave the Celtics a 21-point advantage heading into the fourth quarter. This is just when the Celtics got back to looking like the Celtics. For much of the series, they haven't been able to take threes. The defense, to Orlando's credit, has taken away three-pointers. This was the moment where the Celtics looked like they have all season long. They were not only taking threes, but they were making them, and they were doing it at a very high volume. Some crazy stats that we can relay about the second half in general. And that third quarter, the end of the third quarter, was the start of this. Boston shot 0% from three-point range during the first half. The Boston Celtics, who led the league in three-point makes and three-point attempts, shot 0% from the three-point line during the first half. They were only the second team all season long to go the entire first half of a game without making a three-pointer. That's crazy in and of itself. This team didn't make a three-pointer. But during the second half, they not only made three-pointers, but they made them, like I said, in high volume. During the second half, they shot 13 of 18 from three-point range. Ridiculous shooting percentage from long range for a team for an entire half of basketball. You know what percentage that is? 72% from three-point range. There are teams that don't shoot that well at the rim in an entire game. The Celtics shot 72% from three-point range for the entire second half. It was impressive, and it was a complete knockout punch. And the Celtics continued to pour it on from that 24-4 run to close the third quarter. They carried it on through the entire fourth quarter. It didn't matter if the bench was checking in. Torrey Craig checks in, boom, immediate three-pointer. Baylor Shireman checks in, boom, immediate three-pointer. It was every single player who was firing up shots was connecting during the second half, and exactly what I said. That is what the Celtics looked like all season long, and boy, did they get back to looking like themselves during that second half. Just a complete onslaught, a wave of momentum, a tidal wave that Orlando just had no answers for. And the biggest reason why, we can rewind to one moment that happened early on during the third quarter, and it's all because of Jaylen Brown. We talked about this after the last game on the podcast. The Celtics were playing with aggression during Game 4. They said, okay, Orlando, you want to take away the three-point line? We've got the guys, we've got the dogs, we've got the superstars that can dominate the game by taking the ball off the dribble. Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum did that during Game 4 by getting to the line for 24 free throws. They made and attempted more free throws during Game 4 than Orlando did as an entire team. Jaylen Brown at the start of the second half continued that aggression. He scored 15 points during the second half, 9 during the third quarter, and he drove on Paolo Banchero twice in the early moments of the third quarter, twice picked up fouls. That left Paolo Banchero, the best player, unquestionably, on the Orlando Magic, with 5 fouls, with 9:46 left in the third quarter. Jamal Mosley, Orlando's head coach, had no choice but to take Banchero out of the game at that point, and the game was tied. It was 53-53 when Banchero checked out of the game and went to the bench. And by the time he came back at the start of the fourth quarter, Orlando was down by 21. This game was over by that point. The Celtics had already punched their ticket. They were going on to the conference semifinals, and it was just a matter of what the final score was going to be and if everyone made it out of the game healthy. And it wound up being a 120 to 89 win for the Celtics, and everyone did make it out of this game healthy. So a great job for the Celtics. But it was very interesting to me to see how Jamahl Mosley handled that situation with Paolo Banchero. To me, as I'm watching this, and listen, credit or defense given to Jamahl Mosley here. He hasn't been inside TD Garden to see a run like that. I've had the pleasure of seeing that in person for years now, and in particular last season when the Celtics made that run to the NBA Finals and winning the championship. You can feel when something is building. You can feel when there is a tidal wave building that will not be able to be stopped by the other team. I could feel that when the lead went from 0 up to about 10, 12. At that point, it was like, Orlando, you better get a stop and you better make a couple baskets or else this game is over. That was the moment when I thought that Jamahl Mosley, his only choice was to bring Banchero back at that point. If the game gets away, you're going to bring him back. You're preserving his eligibility for the rest of the game by having him not foul out. But by the time he's going to come back at that point, the game's going to be gone. Well, Mosley decided, I need to have Banchero in the fourth quarter. And he did come back in the fourth quarter, but Orlando was already down by 21. So two key moments there when Jaylen Brown was applying pressure against Paolo Banchero when the ball was in Jaylen Brown's hands, drawing those 2 fouls, making it 5 fouls on the night with Banchero with 9:46 left in the third quarter. That's number one. Number two was the decision by Jamahl Mosley not to bring him back. And I understand the fear of you could possibly bring him back and then lose your best player for the rest of the game. But in the end, it didn't matter that they had him for the fourth quarter because the game was already over. So, I'm not an NBA head coach, but I felt that when it got to about 10 or 12 points, it just felt like you better bring him back if you want to have a chance to win this game during the fourth quarter. They did not bring him back. They did not have a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter, and the Celtics just kept pouring it on. So that was an interesting moment for me. Heading out of this series, you do have to give credit to the Orlando Magic. They played hard. They played tough. This was a hard-fought series. And the Orlando Magic can go into the offseason being proud of what they brought to the table. I think, I have some relationships with people down there. I worked there for a year before I came up here to Boston to work for the Celtics. And some of the people that I spoke to, they were proud of the way they competed during this series. They were proud of the way that they brought their defense to the table and the way they played physical basketball. So certainly for Orlando, they've got something to build upon going into the offseason. That team is close. That team is very close. They need a couple more pieces. And by the way, they were missing some pieces, namely Jalen Suggs during this series, their elite defensive point guard. But they're a couple pieces away from being a legit threat in the Eastern Conference, so keep an eye out for them. But I said before this series, I sent it out on X, I said this is the perfect first-round series for the Boston Celtics. Why? Because you knew what Orlando was going to bring to the table. Elite defense and a super high level of physicality. And the Celtics were going to be forced to meet that. They had to meet the moment. They had to meet the level of physicality right out of the gates in this postseason. It's not like playing, I think Orlando would have been the number 4 seed in the East or better if they were healthy all season long. They wound up in the 7th seed. So it wasn't like playing a normal 7 or 8 seed that barely gets into the postseason, not a very competitive team that you're just going to crush. We just saw what Cleveland did during the first round of the Miami Heat. It wasn't even a series. But this series was a series. And the Celtics had, as I said, the Celtics had to meet the moment. They had to meet the level of physicality right out of the gates during the postseason. And now they're already at that level. They don't have to now turn the switch on and meet that level heading into the next round. They're already there. So I personally believe that that is a huge benefit of being able to get out of the series in a gentleman's sweep, 4-1. You're feeling good about yourself. You just demolished the team during the second half of the closeout game, but you really had to bring the physicality. You had to play through that. And by the way, you had to figure out a way to win games that was different than the way you won games all season long. The Celtics won games all season long by dominating the three-point line. They took a lot of threes, and they made a lot of threes. Orlando took that strength away during the series, yet the Celtics are so great, and they are so talented, and they are so balanced that they found a way to win 4 out of 5 games by not taking and making a lot of three-pointers. So that just goes to show the level of skill and depth that the Celtics have on this roster, that they found a way to win 4 out of 5 games without that ability that they showcased throughout the regular season, which was taking and making a lot of three-pointers. So props to Boston for figuring it out. Props to Orlando for giving us a very competitive series. It was fun to watch. I thought it was the perfect first-round matchup for the Celtics. Now let's hope that Jrue Holiday can get healthy with that hamstring. Let's hope that Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum are feeling good going into the next round. But by closing this out tonight, they just bought themselves an extra couple days of rest. My assumption is this next series is not going to start until at the very earliest, probably Sunday, maybe Saturday, but I'm guessing later than that because the Pistons and Knicks are going to battle it out in Game 6 on Thursday night. Who knows what happens there? If Detroit wins, we're going to a Game 7. So the Celtics shaping up to be in good shape and feeling good about themselves, feeling physically well heading into the next series. Great on them, and props to them for closing this out tonight at home. Let's dive into some comments from our fans, shall we? First up, we've got Pedro D on Jayson Tatum's impressive performance this series. I cannot wait to highlight this. Next up, we've got Bucky on where they think the Celtics stack up against the rest of the league right now. And then last but not least, we've got Timmy McDonald on the bench vibes for the Boston Celtics. And those vibes are very high right now. All right, first up, Pedro D. It's all on you. All right, Pedro D, you are up first. Here's your comment. JT with MVP performances in this series. That's a fact. No one in their right mind can disagree with that comment right there. Jayson Tatum was unbelievable when he came back from injury after Game 2. As we know, he fell down. He injured that right wrist during Game 2, and he had to head out. He didn't come back until Game 3. Now the stats, let's outline these of what Jayson Tatum did during Games 3, 4, and 5. Unbelievable numbers here from Jayson Tatum coming back from injury. Game 3, 36 points and 9 rebounds. Game 4, 37 points and 14 rebounds. And then tonight in Game 5, in a closeout opportunity, 35 points and 10 rebounds. He averaged a 36-point double-double over the final 3 games of this series. That is MVP-level basketball. That is what you want to see out of your superstar, and that is exactly what Jayson Tatum brought to the table during this series after he came back from injury. Clearly, it seems like that wrist is feeling just fine, and we see it from the celebration. He said Baylor Shireman gave him the idea of what this celebration was to be. Now after he makes a 3, he's grabbing that right wrist and saying, I'm feeling just fine, folks. And I tell you what, he looked like he was feeling just fine tonight. Finishes the night, as I said, with 35 points. He was 10 of 16 from the field. That's 63% from the field. He was 4 for 5 from long distance. That's 80% from three-point range. And he was a perfect 11 for 11 from the free throw line. Jayson Tatum played like a super-duper star in this series. He played like an MVP, and you got to love the way that he is playing heading into the next round. The Celtics know they're going to need superstar performances from him if they want to get to where they want to get to, if they want to get to where they got to last season. Sure looks like he's ready to answer the call, especially after what we saw out of him during this series after he came back from injury. All right, next up is Bucky, who's got a very confident statement here for the Celtics. All right, here it is. We are the best team in the league. That win was needed. Now it's wraps. Went on that run without Jrue. And that last part is what I want to start out with, because some people might not be paying attention to the fact that the Boston Celtics just did that without Jrue Holiday. Their superstar two-way player who gets it done. And listen, when I say superstar, obviously he's not making first-team All-NBA. He could do that defensively every single year. If you really know what you're talking about when it comes to defense, Jrue Holiday is unquestionably one of the top 5 defenders in the NBA. Ask anyone who knows what they're talking about when it comes to basketball. They will agree with that. But the Celtics played the final 3 games of the series without Jrue Holiday. They played without Jrue Holiday tonight, and yet they wind up with, like I said, a blowout, 120-89 victory, 31-point win in a closeout game without their two-way star, without their Swiss Army knife, who is just critically important to what the Boston Celtics want to and get to do on a nightly basis at both ends of the court. He's so important to their long-term goals. And let's hope that he comes back for the next round feeling good with that hamstring. Let's hope he doesn't tweak it the rest of the way and he's just good to go. Great on the Celtics for closing this series out just in time to get him a little bit of rest going into the next series. Now, the rest of this comment, we are the best team in the league. That win was needed. The Celtics certainly looked like the best team in the league during that second half. There's no question about that. I mean, no one was going to stop them. The way that they were playing, the way that they were moving the ball, the way that they were shooting the ball, the way that they were defending and rebounding. Everyone from top to bottom who checked into the game was bringing the goods. That was excellent team basketball, and certainly enough to make Bucky say after this game that the Celtics are the best team in the league. Now, we're going to find out in the next month and a half or so if they really are the best team in the league. There are some other very, very good teams playing basketball right now. As we just saw, the number 1 seed in both the East and the West swept their first round series going away. Oklahoma City dominant over Memphis during the first round. We saw Cleveland dominant in the first round over Miami, a 50-point win to close out their series just last night. So let's not get too far. Let's not put the cart ahead of the horse. Let's wait and see how this unfolds. But certainly it felt like the Boston Celtics could very well be the best team in the league when they are playing the way that they did during the second half tonight. That win was needed. It was great to see the offense come back to life. Now the C's are feeling good about that offense as they head into the next round. We still don't know who that's going to be. The Celtics took care of business tonight. The New York Knicks did not. All right, so the Knicks and the Pistons will go at it again on Thursday night in Game 6 out in Detroit. Detroit's looking for a home win on their home court in the postseason for the first time since, I believe, 2008. It's crazy. It's been 17 years since they've had a win in their own arena out in Detroit in a playoff game, but they've got an opportunity to log a big one Thursday night that would wind up sending that game or that series to a 7th game. So all the while, the Celtics and Jrue Holiday, they played like the best team in the league tonight, and now as a result, they get to rest up and hopefully be feeling very good about themselves, both physically and mentally, by the time the next series comes around. All right, folks, our final comment of the night coming in from Timmy McDonald, who says, Baylor, Shireman, brings awesome vibes. Tatum was giddy after Shireman's 3. That chemistry matters, in my opinion. All right, I love Baylor Shireman and what he brings to the vibes on the bench. There's no question about it. I was looking at Taylor Snow during the second half of this game, and Taylor was like, isn't it awesome that Baylor's wearing his headband even while he's on the bench? Like, he's got it on. He's like ready to go no matter what. He's dressed, ready to check into the game at any moment. He's got that headband on. Doesn't matter if he's playing, if he's starting, if he's coming off the bench, he's ready to roll. But tonight, he was just bringing such great vibes to the bench. Every time Jayson Tatum made a big play, he was throwing up that wrist celebration. Actually, I'll reverse it, grabbing the right wrist as Tatum celebrates after the three-pointer. As I said earlier in this episode, Jayson Tatum told us all that Baylor Shireman came up with that idea for Tatum's new celebration after he makes a 3. I love the celebration. He's basically saying, like, my wrist is just fine. And you just saw it on that play right there where I canned a 3 in my defender's eye. So things get reversed a little bit. The Celtics are up by 30 points. They take Jayson Tatum out of the game. Baylor Shireman winds up checking in, and he makes a three-pointer of his own. And then as he comes back down the court, he's throwing up his own wrist grabby. He's a lefty, so I got to grab the left wrist. And then you pan over to the camera pans over to the bench, and Jayson Tatum is doing it right back at him, celebrating. Both of them throwing up the wrist hold. You just love to see that chemistry, to Timmy's point here, and that stuff does matter. Last year after the championship and coming into this season, Brad Stevens spoke about it. Jayson Tatum, Jaylen Brown spoke about it. Joe Mazzulla spoke about it. it was how great all of the players got along last season. Like, they were really rooting for each other, pulling for each other. No one cared what their roles were. No one cared what their numbers were. Everyone just enjoyed being a team together. And Baylor Scheierman is one of the new pieces, basically one of the only new pieces on this roster, essentially replacing either O'Shea Brissett, if you want to consider that, or he replaced one of the players who were no longer here. And he comes in and fits in like a glove. I mean, these guys have been loving having him on the bench. He has loved cheering his guys on when he has been on the sideline cheering. And then when he gets in, like, he made an impact for a solid stretch of the regular season where he was showing, okay, here's why the Boston Celtics invested a first-round pick in me. So just great to see Baylor Scheierman bringing the vibes on the bench, and then the roles getting reversed at the end of the game when Scheierman's out on the court and Tatum is bringing the vibes on the bench because now he wants to support his guy, Baylor Scheierman, who's drilling three-pointers and celebrating out on the court. The vibes were up for everyone on the roster, and how could they not be? A gentleman's sweep. They close the series out in 5 games. You got to take care of business early to try to preserve as much energy and physical wellness as possible if you want to make a long playoff run. The Boston Celtics just took care of business. Their very first closeout opportunity of this postseason, they knocked the Magic out. As I said at the start, they didn't just hit them with a punch that wobbled the Magic. They hit them with a punch that knocked them down to the ground in Orlando, never got back up. And now it's the Celtics who are dancing into the second round, awaiting whoever's going to be their opponent. It will be either the New York Knicks or the Detroit Pistons. New York has a chance to close that series out Thursday night in Game 6 out in Detroit. If New York doesn't win that game, we're coming down to a Game 7 back at MSG in New York to find out who it will be advancing to the second round to take on the Boston Celtics. The Celtics will host Games 1 and 2 of that series. We don't know when it's starting. We don't know who the opponent will be, but we will be talking about it Friday afternoon on Celtics Weekly. Make sure you tune in to Celtics Weekly right here on YouTube on Friday afternoon. We don't know the exact time it's coming out, but keep checking the channels, check our social channels. You'll know when it's live, and we want to make sure that you tune in and watch, and we can talk about everything that just happened with the Celtics and everything that's about to happen to the Celtics. We might know who their opponent is by that time. So we'll see you Friday. In the meantime, I appreciate you tuning in. As always, thank you for sending in your comments on X, and I'll see you sometime whenever that next home game is for the Boston Celtics, Game 1 of the second round. Appreciate it, folks. Have a great rest of the week.